Alright, I will call this meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mrs. Meyer.
Alright, we will start out with the approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting on November 9th, 2020. You guys get a chance to look at them?
I move to approve.
Second.
It has been properly moved and seconded to approve the minutes from November 9th, 2020. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Approval of general fund vouchers 78198 through 78271 and wire transfers 202-10200 through 202-10265. Entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
It has been properly moved and seconded to approve the general fund vouchers and wire transfers. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, those are approved. Next, public comments on the agenda. Anyone?
We do have one. I let the Peppers know that typically the comments have to be tied to or have to be pertaining to an agenda item, and the COVID-19 response, what they want to speak to, kind of it falls under that category. So,
Sounds good. Go ahead.
Our question is, we've been asking about ski club for the students here in Clear Lake, and we've been denied to have the kids go prior. You know, our club normally starts the first Monday in December, and they're saying, no, we can't go until January. When I can accept that, but the WIA sports are going on and they can do things, but the other kids are told they can't. I don't understand why we are being told no, or the kids are being told no, but other kids can still play basketball or any sport that is WIAA related.
And I guess to follow that, you know, we've been in contact with Tolagan and they're taking precautions too, like they limit the number of people in the chalet. It is an outdoor activity, so obviously kids already have masks on, you know, and stuff, and we just feel since it's an outdoor activity, we should be allowed to do ski club. We don't have that many kids that ride the bus, so we could easily, on the bus, separate them out enough so they're, you know, the distance is far enough. So I guess that's the question why we're here is, you know, and I've been on the phone with Josh before, and we just feel, and I think the kids are frustrated too because they want to go. Some kids can't drive to the hill, and some parents don't want their kids driving to the hill. So
How many kids are we talking?
I don't know what we have this year. I haven't talked to Miss Ohm. Last year we had 23, I think.
yeah, right around there.
Mid-20s, but not all of them go. You know, usually it's
We average around 12 to 15. Sometimes we only have 7 or 8 depends on the night.
My kids went tonight,
Yeah, I
but is
didn't
that,
tell their
it's
kids.
just that the school bus isn't going?
right.
I was kind of wondering too.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what Josh told me is he can't deny kids to go to Trollhagen to ski. I mean, that's their choice. What our concern is the safety of the kids that don't want to drive in this weather.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, the little bit of snow, like what happened last night, it was slippery out, and if those kids, if that would have been on a night like tonight with those windy roads to Trollhagen, those kids are gonna experience and they're gonna have an accident. That's our concern. I mean, we've been involved with the ski club here for many years, and I mean, we've done it, I don't know, 5-6 years I think now, maybe more, I don't know. And, you know, we pay to use the bus. Mark volunteers his time as a driver, so there's no cost to the district. They're actually making money. I don't understand why we wouldn't be allowed to go.
So it's up to you guys. So the next agenda item is a COVID-19 response, and typically with the public comments, since we haven't had many, it's really up to the board, if, you know, to engage in question and answer. But do you want to just move to the next one?
Yeah,
My
what's on?
first item is the winter athletics and then co-curriculars. Does that sound good?
Yep, let's move on to that. Do you guys
Okay.
have anything else? Okay. Okay, with that being said, the new business, the review of the, or do you want to move right to which top COVID-19 response one?
Yep, review
Okay.
of COVID-19.
Okay.
Good?
Yep.
Okay,
Good.
so starting out, just to address that, so it is the winter athletics and co-curriculars is the first thing that I wanted to talk through just with you guys. Right now we're currently following the WIA guidelines, and then all co-curriculars are non-WIA affiliated. You know, we're making decisions on a month-to-month basis. We've been communicating with all of the different clubs, ski club being one of them, and appreciate Mark, you know, even having those conversations with me on the phone the last couple weeks here. But just to give you some ideas of what falls into that category, or in that category, FFA, FCCLA, Spanish club, travel club, ski club. Those are some of the non-WIA affiliated either clubs or activities. There's more than that, but those are some of the main ones. Right now, we're limiting transportation on those. We're not limiting any movement internally. We're allowing the meetings to take place. And I get the frustration. I have met with some students of leaders of those clubs as well. My daughter being in one of them. And what we've asked for the clubs, develop a plan. Let us know what on an individual basis, kind of what the plan is, and then we talk through allowing those or not allowing those due to the COVID situation. So it isn't specifically to the ski club. It has nothing to do with the finances. I've talked to Miss Ohm as well, who's the in charge of that ski club, and it's that we're not denying anybody's right to go to the hill. We're allowing that to take place. I know that they bought their passes prior to the year starting, or the season, I should say, starting. So I didn't want to impact the discounts that they received for that. So I said, just like if a parent were to take them, I'm not going to step in and say that they can't do that. It's just kind of on a almost non-school affiliated situation that they can go up there and ski. So really every situation is based on an individual, or every club, we've been making decisions just monthly, and then it's individual basis. So the sticking point that we've talked through as far as the ski club is just the transportation. Having the multiple kids, we're trying to keep kids separated as much as possible. But on they'd be riding the bus outside of, kind of a normal, the normal bus trip. So it'd be an additional trip from the school, to the hill was kind of the thought process behind that at this point. So we it sounds like kids are transporting, or parents are transporting kids to the hill, and they have been skiing. We plan to revisit that in the end of next week for January to determine whether or not we transport or not. I wish there was a secret code or a matrix you could follow for everything, but there's so many different variables to all of these decisions, and I know even some, I'm not even going to pretend like there aren't discrepancies, because I know the WIA guidelines that were released are more or less restrictive than what schools are doing, and specifically our school. So I recognize that too. I'll give you another example, which my daughter was a part of, the jinglers, at the grocery store. There wasn't a plan proposed, so I said, we can't do it. You hate to be the bearer of bad news, and I feel like every time I turn around, I'm giving, I'm disappointing someone or giving bad news. But, I met with the teacher as well and said, I'm totally fine with the jinglers going. We just need a plan in place. They need a supervisor. They have to be masked. There are individuals in the school and in the community that are very concerned with the virus, and whether or not we believe that or don't believe that, it doesn't matter. We just have to have a plan in place and have precautions in place so everybody feels comfortable about the decisions that are being made and what we're doing. Like for example, specifically the jinglers, if they remain outside and have the masks on, I would have been fine with it. And then they were talking through, I'm not sure what their decision was, or if they were going to get me a proposal to do that. But then if they would have proposed that, with that situation, I would have been, or we would have been comfortable with that. So specifically the ski club, and I'm open to dialogue around this as well, as it's the transportation piece, is having, those kids on a bus and transporting kids to the hill. Initially, at the time, I don't know if Mark, if you care if I speak specifically to your situation. Do you mind? Mark?
Well, what?
Your health
Yeah.
situation? Okay. Even when this was originally, when we were talking through it in the initial, Mark was going through some health concerns of his own and wasn't able to drive. And then by the time we reached the second conversation, he had shared with me he had been cleared. But that was a variable as well. But the main variable was just having kids, putting now a separate group of kids onto a bus and transporting them to the hill. Any questions?
No.
Okay, so I guess my question is, and I know you haven't been too thorough with me about the transportation, but I do drive bus, and some of the buses on the routes have 2 kids per seat. Some kids are on that bus for a half hour together on the bus. So if that's the concern, then how come we're not concerned about the kids on the bus? Being a bus driver, we can't. I sub, so I don't dictate where kids sit on the bus.
Yep.
But we're letting 30 kids on a bus. But if I have 12 kids, that's a big difference. We can separate them out. But when I sub for some of the drivers, like I said, there's 30 kids on the bus. You can't put 1 kid here and 1 kid here. There's 2 kids, sometimes 3 kids in a seat.
Yeah.
So what are we supposed to do?
Yeah, and I agree with you. The difference is now, instead of just the routes, now we're taking those kids from those routes and now putting them on a separate route. So the initial thought behind the buses, because I agree with you, they aren't separated as much as we'd like on the normal routes, and we can't. But we tried to cohort them as much as we can, give them assigned seats, so that way Johnny is next to Timmy every single day. And he goes, we know he's riding that bus, those seats every single day to and from school. And now the difference is now you're taking Johnny and he's riding on a different bus with a different group of kids now to the ski hill. And I guess the line has to be drawn somewhere was really it. I'm not sure how much more thorough you would like me to be.
The list that we usually have is the same one kids that ride the bus every week. So, they go home.
Are you talking ski hill or are you talking regular transportation?
From here to the ski hill and back. It's the same kids each week that ride the bus. We don't have new kids that ride it. Sometimes some kids don't show up. Sometimes, like Sarah said, we have 8 kids go or 4 kids go. And
right.
Obviously, when it gets that low, we take a van. But being in the situation that we're in, and I guess what I'm asking is if that's the concern that you guys have, that we're going to have kids on a bus, then why are we having school each day when we have 30 kids on a bus?
And that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is they're on initial bus coming to school. That's one cohort. Now you're taking kids off of that bus and putting them on a different bus after school with a new group of kids, a new group of a population of students. Mm-hmm. But then you're transferring those kids to the hill.
Bus every time we use the bus.
Yeah, I'm just telling you the thought process behind it. I'm not saying,
So, again, I drive the bus on my time, and we can police. Sarah rides the bus with me, so we can police and dictate where kids are going to sit. So they're legit, And I guess if we would have had this conversation before school or ski club would have started, we're going to say, hey, we're going to take these precautions and do this. But all we were told was that you guys were shutting it down for this month. And they were skiing well before Thanksgiving. They were skiing.
Yeah, and initially we weren't sure if WIA sports were even going to go on. I mean, it's been a lot of, are we doing it? Are we not? Initially we said, co-curriculars, non-WIA. Let's make the decision right now. We're going to go month to month. We're going to, shut it down and not be transporting kids and allowing field trips. And so we made that decision initially. WIA, to be honest, I wasn't sure if winter sports were going to be a go. Right. The mask drama.
I understand that. If they were going to call all the sports, it's fine. We wouldn't be here. But, being that we were shut off for this month, there's probably some kids that couldn't go because they don't have a way to get to the hill.
Yeah.
And there are kids that can't go.
Yeah, and I know that. The last thing I want to do is prevent kids from going skiing or doing FFA or FCCLA. That's not why I got into the profession to be in education. I mean, I look in my own household and there's disappointment with my own 4 kids on a daily basis. So this has nothing to do with like me being anti or us being anti-ski club at all. I really we had to decide where do we draw the line, and if we allow ski club, then are we going to allow Spanish club to go on field trips? Are we gonna allow FCCLA to do field trips? Are we gonna allow FFA? Like, where is that line? And the line, you know, currently has been drawn with WIA sanction because of the guidance from WIA. We're following their rules. Everything else is, you know, kind of being dictated by either the county or internal, you know, guidelines that we're putting in place to try to make sure everybody's safe and keep everyone safe. So I hope you know, I know that this decision is, you know, causing much, you know, disappointment for a lot of kids. Like, you know, and like I said, we've met with a couple kids, Mr. Gillis and myself, specifically met with, you know, some that are involved in the ski club and talked through, you know, the decision and where we're at. And so anyway, what were you gonna say, Sarah?
So is the WIA kids that are in basketball and that, are they being transported by a bus to and from games?
Yes.
It's
they are.
no different than that, is it?
Is it? No, it's not.
So how come we're not telling the WIA kids in sports that they have to drive themselves to and from games? Because they're getting on a different bus with A and B kid too.
Yeah.
After school bus ride to and from school. It's no different.
Yeah, and I'm not arguing that fact at all. I'm just saying that's where the line was drawn. Like, where do we cut this off? And the decision was to follow WIA guidance. With the WIA sanction sports, non-WIA, you know, we're currently not transporting.
How you can do that? How can you tell a certain set of kids no, and you let other kids say, well, it's okay to play WIA sports and we're going to transport you to and from, and then other kids who are not involved in sports be told no? How can you do that?
Is this something that so we did it for a month, is it something we can look at on January 1st again or whatever? And
well, we're going to look at the end of this next week.
Okay.
For January 2nd would be the next,
okay.
You know, next decision as far as what do we open up? Do we release some of the restrictions? Do we not?
Right.
You know, and it is. I mean, there's some discrepancies between what WIA is
And
putting out.
WIA might change by then too.
Yeah, might. You know, and then we need to talk through, you know, if we do allow that, you know, it does open a can of worms then for all of the other non-WIA
Well, you can look at
clubs and
we're an
activities.
outdoor sport.
Say it again?
We're an outdoor sport, so we're outside. We're not, I mean, some kids go here, some go here. So we're not in the interior. Like, if a club is going to a meeting or a show or something where they're sitting together, I could see that being a problem. But being that we're outside, and they, like I said, Dr. Trolhagen, they don't all 4 kids on a chairlift now. One sits here and one sits over here. So again, they're taking precautions, and I guess that's it. If we would have had more of a conversation about why you guys determined that you didn't want us to go.
Well, initially when I met with Ms. Ohm, she was not aware of, you know, what the Trollhagen was putting in place at the time. So initially, they were in the same boat as school districts. I mean, there was a lot of movement.
I talked to Trollhagen in November.
Okay, I'm just telling you the conversation between myself and Ms. Ohm.
Then because they knew what they were going to face.
Okay. Well, that had not all been communicated to me. Not that I'm saying that would have changed my, you know, decision and the conversation surrounding it, but you know, with Ski Hill, you know, we weren't, you know, when I initially met with Ms. Ohm, she said, yep, they're putting things in place. Sounds like they're going to have certain things in place at Trollhagen. We weren't sure exactly what that was going to look like. I think initially we weren't even sure if there was going to be snow, but I know they were making it at the time when we had talked. But yeah, I get your frustration. I mean, I do. I know this conversation isn't unique to Ski Club. I mean, I've been having a lot of these conversations because there's a lot of disappointment across the district with many clubs and activities, and we're trying to do our best, make decisions to keep kids safe, keep staff safe. You know, and I get that it's outside as well, and there's precautions, you know, that they're putting in place. And like I said initially, you know, when we were even deciding for the month of December, I wasn't sure if WIA sports were even going to be, you know, a go or not a go. You know, the mask mandate was still, you know, up in the air. We were waiting to hear if that was going to be extended, and then how that would play with, you know, we were on the phone with WIA about, you know, basketball and wrestling, and we felt like we had control over the variables internally. We knew what we were dealing with inside. We weren't sure what we were dealing with WIA. So that's how we got to where we're at.
So I apologize for coming.
No, that's right.
A little a little bit late. We're on public comment section right now.
We're on review of COVID-19 response at first winter athletics, so we kind of rolled the public comments into that.
Okay, well, I just wanted to throw in there, I think that you can hear the eagerness in the board and in the superintendent that we want to get things rolling and started, so I wanted to thank you guys for coming in and sharing your frustrations with us. Like Josh said, you know, this is not unique to the ski club. Every one of our clubs is struggling with this stuff right now, and my personal hope is that this is swept through and we can get back to life again, but, so anyway, we'll go about, you know, trying to get our decisions made and trying to make it so kids can start doing things again. So thank you for coming in.
And I just want to hit some of the bullets just so you guys know exactly what has been discussed between the two groups. So WIA, we're just following, WIA affiliated sports, we're following the guidelines as dictated by WIA. Currently, the clubs and activities, we're asking coaches and advisors to develop a plan and then submit to administration for approval prior to events. We've already said no travel, no overnight accommodations, no food. Youth sports, we've talked through multiple times as well. That's another one of those you know, topics that we're trying to get to see if we can get something in place where we have something for the younger kids. Right now, the tentative start date for youth sports is January 2nd. Kind of same boat. You know, we've been met with the entire admin team and kind of talked through what that would be. We've decided no competitions, no parents, but we feel like we can have you know, practices at some capacity with the youth sports, and then obviously masks required. Weight room, you know, we've talked about weight training classes and in-season athletes only with a limited capacity. And then, like I said, reevaluating each of these on a monthly basis. And in all honesty, I mean, that includes WIA sports as well, as far as the monthly, reevaluating that on a monthly basis. Thoughts, questions?
Is there an expectation for us to participate in WIA sports because we are a public school district? Or is that our choice?
That's a choice. I mean, we sign a contract with them every year, but that doesn't mean that we have to have kids in the sports every year. It just means that those sports have to be governed by the WIA guidelines and guidance. And we do that right now. We currently do that with junior high and high school.
We're part of the Lakeland Conference, I mean.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, I feel like we have a contractual obligation to participate in this, being part of like that conference. Like there's an expectation.
No, if I'm being totally honest with you, that's a very extremely political piece, I think, to this whole puzzle of COVID. Personally,
no,
that's my opinion.
There's just this feeling that just has to happen. And
yep. And with WIA and the co-curricular, you know, that's not a, those are all, you know, student choice. It's not a, you know, they don't have to do them. It's all, obviously, it's a, their choice to be part of those, so.
I guess I would just like for the public to understand, when you're making choices about clubs, about what they're doing kind of with the last, you're making that mid-month, the month before, for the whole next month. And that's just kind of so you don't have to be making decisions every week. So you take it a month at a time. That's what our admins kind of have to do with this. You can't be visiting clubs every week. So I just want to say I concur or agree with you having to make a decision the month before for the next month, so you can just keep everything moving.
Yeah.
So that's just part of this process, and I think that's hard for some people to grasp too.
Yeah.
Is that that's how you have to make decisions to keep everything moving forward.
No, I wish I would have said this while Mark and Sarah were in the room too, but this isn't just a, you know, what's my gut feeling on this either. I mean, this has been a lot of meetings with Polk County, a lot of meetings with the surrounding schools. Like, what are you guys doing? You know, what are you basing your decisions off of? You know, how are you moving forward with your clubs, with your sports? Like, you know, internally admin meetings. I think, you know, to be honest, in the meetings with the Polk County, if they haven't taken a stance on WIA either, but I think they think that, you know, in all reality, probably, you know, WIA shouldn't be moving forward, you know, with their sports, you know, with the sports seasons as well. It certainly doesn't fall under the guidelines of social distancing and masks, and obviously we do keep masks on, but so I the 2 meetings that we've had, specifically with the ski club and the student that is involved, I was very open with her and said, I totally understand where you're coming from, where it looks like a large discrepancy between ski club and then basketball and wrestling. Like, there's a large difference between that. I totally get that, and explained to that student that right now we're following the WIA guidance, and then we're also following the Polk County guidelines, and then we're there's some in between that we're trying to develop along the way to make sure that we're compliant, but then also opening the doors up a little bit to try to get things going for our kids. And this has not been easy for a lot of kids. I mean, we feel like every time we turn around, we're excluding certain student populations, and then, which has been, I think, harder than we even know. I think, many students are struggling, with the mental health piece, and depressed or sad, or, struggling with it, I guess, for lack of better terms. And then on top of it, you're making decisions where, dances aren't happening, and certain activities aren't happening, and it has not been fun to make those decisions, I can tell you that. But I can guarantee that the decisions haven't been made lightly, and I'm not just, we're not just flippantly saying yes, no, like, who's involved, who's not. Is this a popular sport? Is it not? Like, it really has been a lot of thought put into it.
You and I had was that, it's important that we compare clubs to clubs and athletics to athletics, not the two to each other, because they're totally different animals. When we talk about sports, we're talking about going to events that are sanctioned, that have door supervisors, and we've limited concessions to no concessions. We've got game officials that are masked and making sure players are masked. And we have an ability to contact trace because we know which students came to our building. There's no visiting parents coming right now. And if you talk about a bunch of kids going to a ski hill, which I love to ski, and I love to see kids ski, but you're talking about kids from everywhere on an open ski night coming in and mingling with our kids in a chalet, and it's just a different thing to compare, as far as exposure to our kids. And right now we're not letting any other clubs travel to their events, so that's kind of where we're at.
With that said, if there's guidance that you'd like to give us as far as a direction, I'm certainly all ears for that too.
The only thing that I could add or say to that point, Josh, is I think you guys continue doing the job you're doing. It's kind of it's not a fun part of your job right now, but at the same time, maybe let's start making some preps or having some thoughts or conversations about, hey, maybe this is swept through, and maybe the bulk of the danger is open. So once we do make the decision to start opening things up, what's that going to look like? That's a hope that I have. A lot of people in my world have had it. Over half the people in my world have had it, and the numbers for the state are declining. So, but then again, I might be wrong. But
Yeah. And I like that there's consistency. Like you said, a club's a club, a sport's a sport. And if you start to open clubs, like I know you'll have specific standards. Are you going to something inside? Are you going to something to outside? What are the numbers? How are you going to transport? Can you separate? So I feel like if you keep the same standards and the same questions to each club, like Spanish club going to a restaurant is very different than maybe a club doing something outside, like ringing the bells for Salvation Army. So I just think the more consistent you can be within deciding the clubs, the better it is. And you can, like I said, if you can make the same judgment on all of them, it's just easier.
Yeah. And I feel like we're doing that, but I feel like from an outsider, it looks like we're not at all consistent. When you compare WIA sports to non-WIA singing, it looks
right.
different. And like I said, we're trying to draw the line somewhere, but the opening up is a conversation you'll see in my notes with the exclusionary criteria, which that's a whole nother deal. But anyway, so next thing on the COVID response, the Lakeland Conference, I shared a letter with you. Currently I'm the vice president for the Lakeland Conference for the superintendent group. Had one of our teachers come to me and ask about the decision behind the parent away when you host a athletic. The decision has been made to not have away parents attend athletic events. So she just said, how can we be heard? So I gave her the guidance to say, why don't you draft a letter? I said, well, I'll have it on the board agenda for tomorrow. Tomorrow's the Lakeland Conference meeting, and we can talk through that. I'd say, just so you know, I'm one voice of the Lakeland Conference. All the superintendents will vote, and then that decision will be made that way. When we look at how many schools within the Lakeland Conference are remote and in person, it's a mixed bag. So, the decision was made to not allow spectators from other schools into the gyms, more to do with the remote schools. When I talked to this teacher, I said, to be honest, I'm fine with voting yes. Our parents have done a really nice job. At the meets, they're always masked up. We have not had to do any contact tracing with parents. Our Clear Lake crew has done a really, really nice job in our building, following the guidelines, even if some don't agree with it, which I'm sure there are many that don't agree with it, but they want to watch their kids play, and they do what we've been asked, and it hasn't been an issue at all. They've been very supportive, and I've been very pleased. With that said, I said, when I was speaking to this teacher, I said, but then you have to also think about, we're talking about other parents coming in, and I said that is one concern of mine. When you have an individual that doesn't want to wear a mask, or you have to have that conversation, you don't have a relationship with them, and it makes it a little bit more challenging to sometimes have that. Sometimes it might be easier, but a lot of times it's difficult to have those conversations when you don't know those individuals. But anyway, it's on the docket for tomorrow at the Lakeland level. We talked through it, and we're all on the same page where bringing in allowing parents from other teams hasn't impacted our job as far as contact tracing, hasn't impacted students when they're playing here. So it'll be on the agenda for discussion. So I said, but it's really out of my hands. It's something that will be decided at the conference level. I did say if the conference, I am going to stick with the majority though. I'll vote yes, but if the majority want to not allow it, there's no sense of me saying, yeah, but we're going to, because then we'd only be allowing other spectators into our gym because we're the host school, and then our parents wouldn't get anything out of it because they wouldn't be able to go into the, when we're not hosting, they wouldn't be able to go into the other gym. One other piece that I know some of the schools expressed when we were talking through that is just the size of their gym. We have the luxury of two nice big gyms, so it really hasn't been an issue for us as far as the size and what we can do to spread, but not all of the gyms are the same size as ours in the Lakeland Conference, so that's another piece. But I thought the letter was very respectful. I thought they did a really nice job, articulating the letter. And when I asked her to write, when she wrote it, the guidance that I said, why don't you write the letter, but just don't write a letter saying that you want it. Make sure you add some pieces as to why you feel like it should be allowed or approved. So I thought it was a well written letter and very respectful. So it'll be shared with the group tomorrow. Any questions with that?
No.
Okay. Exclusion numbers. I just wanted to share with you guys kind of where we're at. Currently, we have, for positive cases, this is from the very start of the year, we have 25 students that have tested positive, and 18 staff members that have tested positive for COVID-19. And then to date, right now, this is as of Friday, we had 26 students that were out due to exclusion criteria, and 2 staff members those are at the junior senior high. And at the elementary, we have 21 students that were out, and then 2 staff members that were out. That second piece, I'll speak to that when we get to the exclusionary criteria later. Okay, so then a couple neat things happening. Or I guess the first thing is kind of a fun thing happening. The upcoming concerts, the band and music teachers have really been doing a nice job thinking outside the box. They started today. As far as practice and recording for the concert, but I'll let Mr. Gillis speak to that.
Yeah, the big music department started over at the elementary today. They've been recording over there, and they're going to be doing that the next couple of days, getting all the concert sessions open and recorded for everybody. And then they're coming over to the high school midweek, and they'll be recording the high school junior high band for their performances, and then they'll share that out, video links to the family so they can get caught up on all the achievements.
So just kudos to Mrs. Berg, Mrs. Wallace, and Mr. Verheyen. Really, I mean, music and band, you can't put more restrictions in place and then ask them to do a concert. They really have been, I think they got very creative. I was watching them behind the scenes today while they were practicing and starting recording with third grade today, and they were doing a nice job. The kids sounded great, and they were doing some movements where they were 6 feet apart with masks on, and they were doing a nice job. So, like I said, kudos to them for what they're doing. And when I initially met with them, I honestly said I don't know what to tell you. This was before we came back after our distance learning. I said I would suggest just recording each grade level saying Happy Holidays, and then whatever we get past that is great. But I said I don't know if we're going to be able to reopen. We don't know what the future holds, and it's been we could have asked for a better situation as far as what we thought we were dealing with, and as far as the slowness of this. Once we've reopened, it's been going a lot slower as far as the positive cases and the exclusionary stuff than I had anticipated. Like I said, I wasn't sure if we were going to even be able to reopen on that Monday, because that weekend leading up to Monday, the phone calls started happening. So and so's sick, so and so's out. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I really don't know if we're going to even have enough staff on Monday. And then it just kind of slowed way down, and things are going good, knock on wood.
Mr. Inch, you want to talk about the grant while we're on music?
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
The music department wrote a grant to the St. Croix Valley Foundation, and it was called Clavinova for Clear Lake. It's an electronic keyboard for playing music along with the accompanying the choir, and they got a $3,999 grant.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then Mrs. Wallace at the elementary wrote a grant under the same organization and received a little under $3,000, like mid $2,000 grant to buy some drums that we were trying to work on. Her and I had met a couple times to get those purchased, and we were going to do it through title money because she thought she got denied, and the grant ended up coming through and she received it. So between the two levels, just under $6,000, which is, for our program, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So very exciting, and kudos to them too for taking the time to write those grants and put them in place. So congrats to them. And then lastly, on the COVID-19 response, which I'll be happy to get rid of that little blurb on our board agenda sometime, hopefully in the near future. But distance learning, I put the distance learning handbook in there. I'm sorry, no, we have that later. Distance learning update. I'll let Mr. Peterson speak to this. We just came up with a plan where if we do have to move to a remote learning or distance learning model like we did, if we do have to do that in the future, just some things that we wanted in place for a couple population of kids in our district. So Mr. Peterson, if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, so this came about, we kind of knew going in the last closure, but during the last closure, we definitely just observing and feedback from the students and how they're performing and everything. A couple of populations of kids that we wanted to look at. One of them was our students with special needs, and some of the students with special needs really thrived and did great during distance learning, and then some kids struggled because they just, whether it was the technology or whatever, just struggled with accessing the services that their IEP requires. And so we started a discussion about that, and so we're looking at the possibility or the plan for having select students be invited in by their case managers, setting up a schedule for a couple days a week or multiple times a week for partial days to come in and access some of the services to meet the requirements of their individual education plan. And then along with that, we're also looking at our youngest learners, our junior kindergarten students and our kindergarten students. We had the conversation about what would it look like to have them come in for partial in-person education during a distance learning format. So we had some ideas of our own, kind of as an administrative team, and then we had a meeting with the junior kindergarten team, and did some brainstorming and talking with them, and got a lot of input from them, and kind of shaped out a plan. And so one of the things that we'll be doing real soon, maybe within 24 hours, is sending out a survey to our junior kindergarten and kindergarten families, asking them for some feedback and some help with planning. But the tentative plan is that we're looking at half days for Monday through Thursdays, that we would have our, again, JK and kindergarten kids come in, just to focus on core, mainly on core instruction with math and language arts and reading. The idea, we talked about full day versus half day. We talked about every other day or having cohorts of kids, and I think after talking it through with the kindergarten teachers, we felt that the consistency of every day was probably more important or more impactful, but yet having it be a shorter day to reduce risk and just to keep the focus on the necessities during the time that we're in distance learning. And it would be optional for families. So if there are families who had just said, this isn't going to work for us with this schedule, or they're saying we're just not comfortable sending our kids with the way the COVID situation is right now, they would have the option to keep their kids at home and then do distance learning like we did. That's another reason for the partial days, is that then the teachers would have the opportunity to teach the kids who are in person and still have an opportunity like in the afternoons. And then Fridays would be a student contact catch-up day, to be able to still work with kids or work with families in a distance format too. And then so for both kindergarten and JK, and really for JK, their half-day program as it is. So really their schedule wouldn't really change. Still have a morning crew and an afternoon crew. It'd be the kindergarten that would be different. We would provide transportation. We're thinking that 2 or 3 buses would probably fit the bill. So morning buses to drop off kids at 8, midday buses departing at noon, and then transportation at 3:15 at the end of the day to bring home those afternoon JK students. And that's a small group as it is, and if those that get picked up, we could be even talking about a small bus or a couple of vans even, if it's a really small number of kids. So junior warriors would be open to people who are currently in junior warriors, because those numbers are small. There's not, so kids who do before school care and after school care. And then for junior kindergartners who do wraparound, we would leave it open to the JK kids who currently are already in it, because again, those numbers are small and we feel like it could be a safe cohort, small cohort. And then, breakfast and lunch, we're going to talk with food service to see what our options are there to hopefully provide a breakfast and lunch option for the kids who are in person. And then continue to do the pickup plan probably for the kids who are in the distance learning model. We need to talk with food service more about that. So that's kind of the overview of what we came up with. And again, we're going to send out a survey to parents to ask them, hey, we'll tell them here's the plan, and then are you interested or not? And then get transportation data, and then Billy Joe Johnson would start planning tentative alternate routes, so that if we in the future have to do this, then we kind of have it ready to go, hopefully. So.
And hopefully we won't have to do it. Hopefully we'll keep going in person. But then this also, if we do, it hinges upon, we met with the kindergarten and JK crew, and we said, we would implement this if we were in the same boat that we were when we first implemented distance learning. If it was solely based upon staffing, and our kindergarten and JK staffing wasn't negatively impacted by exclusionary factors or COVID cases, then we would implement this. But if the closure was more due to virus or health related issues, then we might have to revisit this. Or if our numbers in the staff in kindergarten and JK just wouldn't be able to sustain it, then we'd have to revisit this topic as well. So they seem very open, and I think they enjoyed being part of the process, the teachers, as we talked through it, and obviously they live it more than we do, so it's good to hear their voice through this as well. So any questions regarding this plan?
No, I'm sure they need to be there more than anyone, of course.
Yeah, we'd love to keep, going first grade, second grade, but, at some point you have to draw the line too, and the reason the reason that we closed initially, initially was due to staffing, so we don't want to, compromise that either. If we do shut down, we have to make sure that we get our staff numbers back and get everybody back in the building, not have a bunch of kids in the building, and compromise that process as well. But hopefully, like I said, hopefully we won't even have to implement this. So we'll just keep going in person. So, questions? No? Okay. Okay, that's it for review of COVID-19 response.
Okay, then we'll move on to the approval of the resignations.
No. Hang on.
No wrong ones.
B, we need to do first.
Yeah, B.
Oh, okay. Consideration approval of the COVID-19 exclusion criteria.
Okay, there we go. So, I have a stapled copy, it's colored copy in your packet. Looks like this. It says exclusion from in-person instruction. Anybody got it? Okay. All right, so this has been interesting. So this only pertains to, well, let me back up. This packet has exclusion due to symptoms. You'll see symptoms in red, and then on page 3, exclusion due to close contact. So the exclusion due to symptoms, if we have to remove individuals from the building, that remains the same. If you have one of the following symptoms, you're out of the building until you can get a negative test. Or if you have 2 of the following symptoms, you're out of the building until you can get a negative test. So that stays the same. The DHS released guidance pertaining to the exclusion due to close contact. So on page 3, this is the new language, or this was written by us internally based on the language from the DHS and the CDC. I put those links in the emailed version that I gave you, so if you wanted to read those. But so what that says is currently, or what we have been doing is, if you are a close contact, which means you have come in close contact to someone that has tested positive, you are out for 14 days. The new criteria says that if you are a close contact, but you don't have symptoms and you remain symptom-free for the duration, you can come back on day 10, no test needed. If you want to come back sooner, you can get tested on day 6 or day 7. And if you have a negative test result, you can come back on day 8 after the 7-day exclusion period. So the issue is with the language in the CDC and the DHS guidelines that says those individuals that come back early on either day 11, so after your day 10 exclusion, or on day 8 after your day 7 exclusion, there's language in there that says that they should be still monitored throughout the day, the 14 days, and then have strict social distancing and PPE. I forget what the actual verbiage is, but make sure that they wear their PPE and then have strict physical distancing criteria in place. So then districts started, we had a meeting with Polk County, multiple meetings, and then the schools started implementing this on Monday last week, and there was some confusion as far as, and maybe even differences as far as interpretation of what the criteria meant for restrictions once you've been released on day 7, or I'm sorry, on day 11 or day 8 after the 10-day and 7-day exclusion criteria is in place. So districts then started saying that kids could participate in sports. The county had said no, they can't play band, they can't do PE, they can't do sports. And then WIA released a document, which I put in here, the medical clearance, saying that if they returned after day 7, that they could participate in sports. DHS, there were some members of DHS on the review committee, which caused confusion as well. So I talked to the superintendent that's on the board and just said, how is that possible? And he said, well, that doesn't necessarily mean that they approved it, but they were part of the review process. So WIA released this. The majority of schools in CISA 11 have decided to allow kids to come back on those 2 exclusionary criteria and then play in sports. So that's where I'm bringing it to you guys, to the board, to talk through, what we think we should do. So with that, the exclusion criteria. I did talk to the county and said, are you guys thinking of putting out a recommendation for us? Because the issue for me, I don't care if we go with the 7, 10, 14, but the issue is if one school does one thing and another school does another thing, there's going to be, upset parents if schools are doing different things. And I just want to know what the county's recommendation is. They haven't released a recommendation yet. But as of right now, some schools are following this, some schools are not. Some schools are doing kind of an in-between, only allowing 10. In my CES11, I asked all the superintendents to say who's doing it. I think there were 3 schools that are not following this and not allowing kids to participate once they've been released. So the majority are allowing, I shouldn't say follow this, the majority of schools are allowing kids to be released 7, 10, and 14 following that criteria, but then they're not following the restriction criteria. They're allowing kids to participate in sports. They're following the WIA guidelines. As we talk through it, I'll do my best to answer your questions, but I did ask both buildings to go through and just to talk through our close contacts that we've identified in the district. And I said, can you give me the number for the junior high and the elementary of the students that we've identified close contacts, but remove any of the close contacts that were deemed close contacts because of a household member? Because I don't think that would be a fair piece to add to the data. So with removing those individuals, we've had one junior senior high student that has tested positive that we've put on a close contact list, and 0 elementary. So really the numbers certainly speak to our close contacts are not in turn being are not becoming symptomatic and testing positive, which I feel like should be part of this equation that we're making. So I guess that's where we're at as far as the number of kids that have tested positive that we've put on a close contact. So it kind of makes you like, holy smokes, we've been putting a lot of kids on close contact lists. And I think I think the bottom line, just my own personal opinion, I think all of the numbers seem a little bit arbitrary. If the 14 date wasn't arbitrary, then why are we discussing 7 and 10? So the 7 and 10 almost have to be arbitrary as well. I think everybody, this is such a quickly moving target that they're changing things up on us as well, as you guys have seen since this whole thing started. So thoughts on that or questions?
Yeah, I think shortening it isn't a horrible thing. I mean, I really do feel safer with the kids in school than out of school, because even when kids were being quarantined, you'd see them at Nielsen's and it's like, well, you don't get it, but I do think they're following the rules better at school. So
Okay.
I think shorter is better.
Sure.
Well, and having 2 kids out close contact that never ended up with it, it's like you just lost 14 days of school that you didn't need to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if they had an opportunity, I don't know if they test, but if you had an opportunity to test and come back.
And then come back.
I also know people living in the same household who don't test positive. One tests positive, one never does.
Yeah.
Because that was when Abby was out for 2 weeks. We even asked, can she test and then come back after a few days? And that was not an option.
Yeah.
But she ended up not being positive.
Sure.
But it would have been nice to be able to have that option to test, and then she could have gone back and at least sat on the bench for their last volleyball game.
Yeah.
Well, and it's not even a sports thing, it's just some of these kids need to get back into the classroom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
14 days
Yeah.
out of the classroom is a long time, especially if you're not a virtual learner.
Yeah.
So what are you, because these are all 3 different scenarios, right? It's not like you just move it to 7 days.
Right.
Am I reading that correctly?
Right, if they
No.
do 7 days with a test.
If you have symptoms, you're out for 14 days.
Yep.
And then the other 2 options are no symptoms, and you can test after 6 or 7 days. So they're all 3 different options depending on individually what each person is showing or doing.
Correct.
So
So
is
the-
this not you're asking for our school moving to this? And then sports is another issue, correct, about whether they can compete or not.
Yeah, I'm asking, what do you guys want to do? Like, do we want to move towards a 10-day where we allow kids that aren't? And for me, the key piece is this only pertains to kids that don't have symptoms or staff members that don't have symptoms, which I think is a big piece of the puzzle. But then that also does, you run the risk of then, the individuals not being truthful. I think that's something that needs to be out there too.
But I think that could happen no matter what.
And I agree, and I think it is happening. If we're being totally honest. But so this is only pertaining to kids or staff member that don't have symptoms, and immediately they're put on a 14-day exclusion criteria. But then at day 7, if they don't have, and I could probably flip these around so it would go in chronological order. So then at day 7, if they want to be released, they can if they have a negative test. If they still don't have symptoms, if they don't want to go get tested, then they have to wait till day 10. And then if they still don't have symptoms, they can return at day 10. So does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And then the question is, then do we move towards allowing this? My recommendation would be yes, with the caveat that if you guys ask us to put in restrictions, I don't think we're capable of we don't have the staffing to do, do we have these kids that come back early, eat in a different lunchroom? Do we have them, they still will be going into the same classrooms, they'll still be going into the same lunchroom, and then do we allow them
They're supposed to be safe.
to compete in sports?
I know.
What's that?
They're supposed to be safe though if they're following these guidelines, so.
Yep.
Right. I say we do this without restrictions.
I agree.
Or
Yeah.
coming in with,
Okay.
Is that easy enough for you?
Yeah. And then, so does that include participation in athletics, do you guys think?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
so.
My recommendation would be no if we knew every other school was doing it. But now, the majority of other schools are doing that, allowing kids to participate, and there's no way to know if there's kids on the other team that have been released early on quarantine. So it doesn't necessarily, in my opinion, make sense to say no to our kids when they could potentially be playing against kids that have been early released. And then we just have to communicate that out to our athletes that this criteria has changed, and now parents, you need to know that they're most likely you're going to be competing against kids that have been released from quarantine earlier than the 14-day initial criteria. And I don't think many will have an issue with that, but I just think it needs to be communicated out. So thoughts?
agreed.
I still think it's okay when we look at the number of students we've excluded and we've had one test
Positive after that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if Mr. Peterson or Ms. Gillis, if you had anything to add.
I think when we looked at the student data,
Yeah.
that's what kind of made me feel that way too, that we find the kids that we're excluding ultimately rarely, if ever, are actually getting sick. So it gives me a feeling of comfort of not, feeling like I'm not doing something that's reckless or,
Well, we're still maintaining the diligence of masks in school and
Right.
spacing kids out when we can. It's not like we're reducing any of that.
right.
So this will take effect immediately then? or-
Yeah, I mean, I will change, so the last page, the paragraph at the top, that's gonna have to change a little bit. Just the last sentence, obviously I'll take out, and then we'll have to look at those, how we want to restructure that paragraph to
Sure.
reflect what we're actually doing here. So then I would, if the county does step in and say, give out something else, then I think, that might be we might be calling a special board meeting to have that further discussion if they are gonna, give guidance on this or even an order.
And that's the sports part.
Well, it would be in general, because this would be, band and even areas in the school where we're not, we're doing our best and the staff are doing a nice job, but we're, they're not maintaining 6 feet at every turn in the building. I mean, it isn't happening just because it's impossible. So these kids coming back, it's not only gonna impact sports, but it is gonna impact, academics as well. And I think what we're hearing, based on the number, we've had one kid in hundreds of cases that we've already excluded, and I say hundreds because some kids have been excluded more than once, and I do think it's having a negative impact on their mental health and their well-being. With some kids, I think some, in my own household, there's one individual that falls under that, and then I have two boys that are loving it. I think they would love to be excluded, and especially when it's snowing. But anyway, that I don't know, I forget what I was going to say on that one.
Well, I think the argument for the mental health piece is the reason for the reduction in the days of being secluded or
Excluded.
Because I think when you get a virus that starts to shed, you get the virus that starts to shed. Usually, it comes on in a certain window of time. And as you get further beyond that bell curve, the risk is reduced quite a bit. So they felt that they could move that a little bit. But then at the same time, now I heard that the hospital's doubling up patients in the rooms that they have for COVID patients. So.
Yeah. I do, I've had 3 conversations with parents that would fall under this category, and not one of them, which I know sports is always a hot topic, but the 3 conversations that I've had is, can my kid come back? I don't care if they, play sports or they're not even in sports. I really want them in the building.
Yeah.
So
I think that's more my thing, is the academic piece.
Yeah, to
that
be in
you're
school.
in the classroom, you're out of the classroom, you're back in the classroom, like that gets to
And
be
really,
a
I do
lot.
think 4 days is a lot.
So
I mean,
they're-
it just seems shorter. I mean, it is, but it just seems, 2 weeks seems like a long time.
Yeah, and I'd be hesitant to say, let's go with this if our numbers didn't reflect what they do. I mean, we've had one kid,
Right.
one student that has tested positive, and thankfully we haven't had any students that have tested positive or staff members that have tested positive that have had significant health concerns, with the exception of Mark, actually, who was in here earlier. Everyone else has had more flu-like symptoms. But so anyway, okay. If there's anything else on that, we'll just plan on moving forward with this criteria, and we'll change up the little bit of the last paragraph and then communicate it out to staff and families. Sound good?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a step in the direction that we want to go.
Yeah.
All right, next item of business is the approval of the resignations now.
Okay.
So we're not gonna vote on that at all, then?
I don't.
Do we need to approve the exclusion criteria change?
We don't need to.
Okay.
No. Okay, so we just have the one resignation. Alicia Sunday has asked to resign from the elementary aide position in special education.
The reasons are just.
She said Mr. Peterson spoke to her directly, but just ultimately it wasn't a good fit.
Yeah, she just felt that it wasn't a good fit for an open session, but yeah, just that was bottom line. She just, her choice to say, I just don't want to continue.
I move to approve the resignation.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve the resignation. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I would like to say she did a nice job, though,
Yeah.
and was a good fit, and respect her decision and wish her the best.
Yeah, and thank you. Motion approved. So then we'll move on to item D, the approval of our new hires.
Okay, so we have 2 new hires there listed. Dave Hendershot, custodian, to fill the custodial position, and then Nadine Kirk to fill the vacancy left by Alicia Sunday.
I move to approve the new hires.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve the new hires. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. We'll move on to item E, approval of the 2021 distance learning handbook revisions.
Okay, so the revisions are highlighted in there. Nothing major, but because it was an approved handbook, a couple revisions that we made, we just wanted to make sure that it was that they were approved by the board.
And those revisions were what you visited on, Mr. Peterson, about the pre-K and K?
No.
No quarantine.
No.
It was more related to the kids who actually are in distance learning and the teachers, and just as we went through it the first few weeks, I think we just encountered some questions where we said, oh, you know what, we didn't address this in our policy, so we wanted to come back and create something specifically about how we're tracking attendance for kids. And, you know, if a student is on distance learning and the child is too ill to participate, you know, what parents should do to call in and track attendance. And then also just same thing, expectations for teachers who are ill, you know, during distance learning. You know, if I'm a teacher home but I'm too ill to actually perform my job and teach, just expectations about how they would communicate with their students and, you know, how that would be handled.
To be honest, that was one thing we didn't, not necessarily expect, but it was just kind of an oversight. We're like, oh, wait a minute, you know, what if we do have someone that is too ill to teach, and, you know, subbing, you know, in a virtual setting isn't exactly ideal, for, you know, with distance learning. So we just talked through, you know, kind of making it look more similar to like a college style, where if you have someone that's too ill to teach and we can't get a sub to teach that specific subject, you know, we just communicate that teacher would communicate out, you know, that they are, you know, not going to be providing instruction for a certain amount of time, and then that they'll pick instruction back up, you know, at whatever, you know, depending if it's a 1 day or 2 day or multiple days type deal. And then, like Mr. Peterson said, the attendance piece as well. So if students are, how teachers will take attendance, and then if there's an illness.
Okay, then I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the 2021 distance learning handbook revisions.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve the distance learning handbook revisions. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Next item of business is the approval of resolution authorizing COVID-19 district flexibility application.
Okay, so this is an application for waivers from the Department of Public Instruction. I have 3 things listed on there. The length of school day, the hours of instruction, and then regular instruction. So these are the 3 pieces that I'm looking for approval to have waived. It doesn't mean that we won't meet them. Most likely we won't, but just because of the distance learning, the remote setting, I felt like we needed to have those 3 pieces in place. DPI has recommended that you move to get these pieces approved as you need them, not kind of a blanketed, let's check all the boxes and then go through them. So these were the 3 areas of concern that I had currently that we'll need to at least visit as a waiver. So, and then if you look, it kind of gives you the background, it's actually titled Background and Guidance of the Flexibility Application. And then if you look through right here where it says requests for waivers, and then it's got the request checkbox. I apologize, I probably should have highlighted it on your page, but the second page so it's actually on page 4. If you look on the top left-hand corner, the bottom of page 4, the very last one is length of school day. You guys see that one? And then the next one, page 5, has the other 2, about midway down, hours of instruction. And then the last one is regular instruction. So those outline what those mean. So when we do like approval of calendar, you know, there's a certain amount of hours that the certain age groups have to hit of instruction, and this waives those statutes, those requirements from the Department of Public Instruction.
I move to approve the resolution authorizing COVID-19 district flexibility application.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve that motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Next item of business is the review of the 2021 district administrator evaluation.
Okay, so just put that in there. Typically, as you guys know, it's a closed session items. It'll be on the closed session item for next month, but I just gave you guys in the documents, the board notes that I gave you, the link to my evaluation, so you guys can go in there and either submit it in advance, or we can walk through it during the January meeting in closed session like we've done in the past. I just wanted it out there in case you guys wanted to do something different than what we've done in the past, but the evaluation is the same. It's a Google form that you guys can go in there and fill out. And the plan, right now, the tentative plan will be to have you guys just bring your, Chromebooks, and we can walk through it together in that meeting, unless you want to do something different. I'm open.
Has anybody tried that link that Josh had in that?
No.
Because I tried it, it didn't work on mine, but that might be because mine's forwarded to another email. Would that screw that up maybe?
Okay, I can remove those restrictions so you have access to it through your other
Yeah,
email.
or just send me a direct link.
Okay.
Would be fine, Josh, if you could.
So I guess I threw it on there just to see, are you guys good with doing it in closed session in January?
Sure.
To walk through together, and then you guys can ask questions or whatever? Okay. So that's all I had for that, just
Then we'll move on to the next item of business, consideration and approval of board policy 5464, which is early graduation.
Okay, so I have the early graduation policy in there. And then it's a fairly short policy, and then I'm gonna have Mr. Gillis kind of speak to the other pieces that are behind it, or just like the administrative rule that we would follow as process. It wouldn't be listed as part of the policy, it'd just be our administrative rules. So, Mr. Gillis, you want to speak to that? Sure. This would allow individuals to graduate early if they fulfilled all the credit requirements at the high school level.
So it kind of started, my research kind of started at Lakewood Conference Principals meeting, where the schools were talking about early graduation, and I did a little digging. There's only 4 in the Lakeland that do not allow early graduation currently. And, occasionally we have that academic rock star kid that might want a semester head start on college. And they have earned all their credits that they need to earn in our school district. They may have worked ahead or took extra classes. And they want that opportunity to apply at least after having completed their first semesters, their first 3.5 years. That mid-year, that 4th year, they would have the opportunity to apply. And the application process would include Mrs. Kaler and I sitting down with the student and their parent and reviewing their academic success so far and their attendance, talking about their post-secondary plan, basically asking the student to describe their rationale to request early graduation, and then a written approval from the parent or guardian of that child. Then we would bring that, after reviewing that, then we would bring that to the school board as a recommendation, either for or against it. And then you guys would ultimately have the approval process to approve that early graduation. In that whole conversation, of course, they talk about they would know by doing so, by leaving early mid-year, then they give up their athletic stuff and their club participations and things because they're just done for the year then. And they have the opportunity to come back and walk with their class and participate in the graduation process. So by no means is it a reduced credit or anything like that. This is I've done all my credits. I'm a semester ahead of everybody that I'd like to graduate and go on to college.
Is a credit a semester or is a credit a year?
It's in the high school, you have to, like, for example, language arts, you need 4 credits, so you need 4-year-long language arts classes.
Okay.
Yep. A half credit would have a semester-long class.
So some questions that come to mind. Dollar impact on the district when somebody graduates early. Have the counts been done by that time?
Say again?
Have the counts been done by that time? Does this have a financial effect on the district?
No, I mean, as far as staffing is concerned, everybody's.
No, as far as students getting,
Our state counts are in.
Oh, no, it would not actually. It would
not
be,
have an impact?
because what second semester starts January 21st?
3rd week of January.
Yeah, so the student counts would already be completed.
Okay.
And it wouldn't impact staffing either because, you wouldn't
Just
base
to
your
kind of
numbers
put it
on the
in perspective,
mid-year.
Greg, I've only had 1 potential request in 6 years.
Yeah,
So it's a very small minority.
it's not gonna be half the class.
Right.
Well, I know that in other districts, though, that's becoming more of an issue because kids are, there's not as much to hold them here as there has been with all the restrictions that are in place, right? So, my question is, yeah, we might have a rock star that's doing this, but this is actually open up an avenue for, and let me literally use the term misfit, somebody that feels they don't fit here anymore, to take that avenue.
If they had their credits completed.
Then that would be no problem.
And I think it would, you know, if you don't want, I don't know how to politically say it, but you don't want a student in the building that doesn't want to be in the building either. I think that might be problematic and might even cause a student to have maybe more challenging behaviors. But my opinion is if they fulfilled all the requirements, I don't see any reason to not allow it. But
could they not apply that second semester? Say they finished everything they wanted the first half of the year. Could they not apply for college credits and we pay for it? I mean,
yeah, they could.
Yeah, they can.
I mean, that would be very beneficial to a student to do that.
And some of these students, you know, say for example, I'm gonna use myself as a farm kid. If I had all my credits done and I wanted to be done mid-year and go home and farm,
In work.
you could still work.
Right.
It's
So-
not just for college-bound kids.
Yeah.
But it's important to note that they have to finish all
Right.
of their requirements for graduation that anybody else would have to finish. They're just doing it faster.
So say a student learns of this as a freshman and they deem that they want that to be the course of action that they take, but they're in FFA. What makes that, why do we not let them finish out the co-curricular stuff while they graduate early?
I think the thinking would be, for example, they're no longer in the building following our rules every day and following the course of things, daily business in school. They may have gone off on a different track of their own social life, and we want to be careful about that coming back into the building and mixing with the students who are still in the building. You know, sometimes you get some mild oats in your senior year and they start trying other things out, and we want to be careful that we're not mixing that together at events outside of school. And we want to make sure while they're in the building and they're our students that we still have governance over them.
Okay, so that's our decision then.
Correct.
I'm guessing it's hard to get that many credits on 3.5 years anyhow.
You'd have to get after it.
Yeah, you would.
Yeah, you couldn't have too many miscues.
But it is possible, obviously, if we're talking about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it really rewards somebody that's really worked hard, because that's what they would have to do.
Yeah. And like you said, Greg, if they're starting at their freshman year and already planning for that track and they're busting their case to get after it, I think that's a pretty good program.
I just wonder though, with like that farm kid that wants to, wants to go down that route so he can get in the fields or whatever, to not have the ability to help with the banquet. Maybe consider doing that on a case-by-case kind of a thing. I don't know.
I think that gets too hard.
If you only have one in 6 years, I'm pretty sure that person's not coming back.
Yeah.
Graduation means you're off and on to better.
They're doing that for a purpose.
I don't know, that's a good meal.
It is.
Started.
And hopefully we can get back to that this spring.
Yeah.
Membership till 20 or 21, right? So
Oh,
I would
that's
say
true.
it's a unique situation.
I move to approve board policy 5464, early graduation.
Second.
Then properly moved and second to approve board policy 5464. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed. Motion passes. Next item of business is consideration and approval of board policy 2271.01, Start College Now program.
Okay, so we already currently do this. It's just the Neola version of the Start College Now program policy. So now this policy and then the next one is specific to youth options. So those have been split into two. So this one is just the Start College Now program.
of course, I think you probably would, right?
Within a
Yeah.
specific amount of time.
It is, there's some cost to the,
Yeah, there's a window.
They write a check for the cost of the classes,
Yep.
and if they fail,
So if they
then
fail-
get all that radioactive.
if they withdraw, I don't think they have to pay, but if they fail or withdraw in a certain window, then they, if they fail, they have to pay, and then if they don't withdraw, if they withdraw outside of a certain window, they have to pay, otherwise they don't.
Sounds fair to me, I'll entertain a motion.
Is there a certain GPA for good academic standing? What is, or is it just a
Yeah, that seems a little subjective.
prepay?
What, say it again?
The A must be in good academic standing. Is that like a 1.0, 2.0?
Mm.
That's a good question.
I believe it's in.
I imagine it says somewhere, yeah.
I'm guessing that would also include being an academic staying, not being an attendance issue as well.
You gotta leave things vague like that, Skip, so we have things to talk about in the future.
Well, and I think it's actually within the
There's probably a definition
language of
somewhere.
the Start College Now language, but I'd have to look into that.
Okay.
Oh, very well could be.
We used to have some language, local language, that pertained to that, like define good standing, so that's something we could always consider adding to the policy,
Okay.
just to clarify that. I think it related to, like you said, attendance, GPA.
Because I think we have denied people in the past that their GPA wasn't good,
Yeah.
if I recall correctly. I'm thinking of a couple specific that I won't say it.
Do you guys want to table that, and I can look into that a little more?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we just
Should we table this one? Okay.
And would D be, if a person received a D, would that be a fail? It would just be an F, right?
Failing
Yeah.
is
fail would
technically
just
an
be
F, yeah.
right? D minus would pass.
It wouldn't pass. Now, this prerequisite course, they still have to redo it. Because prerequisites, I believe, have to be a C or above.
The requirement of college.
If you were gonna take it and needed to use it towards a degree, it might not work. For this purpose, it could.
So would that be a failing grade then in our eyes, or would it just be an
No.
F?
It just wouldn't help the student.
It wouldn't help, they're showing it on their transcript's not gonna help. It's not us approving them for it, to start it.
Well, that's what I'm asking, should it be or not?
Well, no, because you're not gonna know what their grade is gonna be when they start. Is that what you're saying? If they get a D minus in this
Yeah,
course?
do you get to see those grades?
Should they have paid back then?
They do-
Should
we
that
do,
be
yeah.
Considered like an
Okay.
F
Yeah,
or
I
a
mean,
D?
if they don't attain the credits for, if they don't attain an average or,
A certain number.
I'm just asking, I'm not either way, I'm just trying to top Skip's question.
Well, it's tabled already, so let's
Yeah.
table it and then look, once we get a little, few more answers on that.
Yeah.
Double table
Let's-
that one.
Let's table, could we table both, just because
Yeah.
they're tied together, and then I'll get more information on that for both, for you guys in January.
All right, then we'll move on to our superintendent note.
And I really don't have anything. We think we hit most of everything that's going on in the response to COVID. I do want to say I feel like that the staff are really doing a nice job trying to resemble some normalcy with the different things that are going on at the, I know we talked about the co-curriculars, but the club activities, they're still having meetings and still meeting with the kids and trying to come up with ideas. I do want to speak to, I was able to get into the FFA classroom and the first witness to, I got to hold a turkey and they butchered a turkey or killed a turkey in front. It was a very
Process.
yeah, it was a really neat experience. I'd never, unfortunately, I've never seen that before, and it was. I think I asked far more questions than any of the kids, and it was a fun process. I actually recorded some of it and shared with my own children.
And they didn't eat turkey for Thanksgiving.
I got to eat some of it. Yeah, exactly. No, they processed it. They did start to finish. It was a really neat process that Miss Watson did in there. It was from start to finish. They kept the wood farm was nice enough to donate the turkeys at the Food for America, so they allowed the kids to feed and hold the pigs and the turkeys back in the FFA, in the ag room. And then the pigs went back to one of the farms, and the turkeys, they were able to keep the Wood family donated them to the school. Then they're going to be used at the FFA banquet, hopefully. So from start to finish, I mean, I even got to see how they cut the whole, the garbage can that had hole, and putting the turkey in the garbage can, and then they cut the throat and did the whole thing. It was really a fascinating process to watch, and neat for the kids. The kids, they were, I got to pluck some feathers with the kids, and just to see, it was, like I said, it was fascinating. I felt a little bit too fascinated by the whole process, but it was fun to watch, and Miss Watson really did a nice job. I was expecting something totally different. It wasn't this, at first I'm like, oh my gosh, we're gonna get phone calls and emails, and and it wasn't, it was a little gruesome, but it wasn't like what I envisioned. Like, it was very much a clean process. The kids were a part of it. It wasn't this big joke of let's cut the turkey's neck. I felt like the kids were very much invested and went through the entire process, and then they ended up, I think they smoked the turkey. At least what I got was some of it was smoked, and they shared it with me, and it was from start to finish. The kids got to see it. So really, really neat to see. So there are some things happening that are feeling like we're kind of getting back to normal again in some of the classrooms, and even though we have masks on, and but I really do feel like it's been nice having the kids and the staff back in the buildings. And I know I said this earlier, I wasn't sure how long we were going to make it, but really things have slowed down. We still do have, as you heard, the numbers of staff that are out. We are still battling the exclusion process, but this new criteria, I think, is going to help a lot with it. And thankfully, the staff and students that we've had that have tested positive are have been exhibiting minor symptoms for the most part, just flu-like. I shouldn't say minor, but flu-like symptoms, with the exception of one who thankfully he's doing really well, Mark. But it's been going really well, and I'm hopeful and that we'll make it through this week and into next week, before the holiday break here. So that's all I had, unless you guys had anything specific to your guys' buildings. But
I'm really pleased with how people are working through it.
Yep. So that's all I had.
And I will, does anybody have any future agenda items that they want to put on the next meeting?
No.
Then I will entertain